Jacob has finally settled into a land. He finally has a family, and this is where the story comes focus point onto one of his sons, and his name is Joseph. Joseph has such an interesting story because you see, Joseph always does the right thing in the story, and yet he keeps finding himself in a place that he did not ask to be in. He keeps finding himself in a place that he does not want to be in. And this is the interesting part about the story of Joseph and how you and I maybe can find a lot of hope in Joseph's story. Have you ever found yourself in that position? You keep doing the right thing, but you keep finding yourself in a place that you don't want to be in. You keep doing the right thing, hoping that you'll get out of the situation you're in, but you find yourself even in a worse situation. Welcome to Sabbath School Short, and this week we're looking at lesson number 11, and it's titled Joseph, Master of Dreams. And the memory text for this week is found in Genesis chapter 37, verse 19. It says, "Then they said to one another, 'Look, this dreamer is coming.'" Jacob has finally settled in his land, like I said, and Joseph is one of his younger children. But Joseph has this dream where he is shown that he is actually going to be the one who receives the inheritance of Jacob, that he's going to be better, he's going to be in a higher place of authority than his brothers. And you see, his brothers were already jealous of him because their father, Jacob, loved Joseph much more than he loved his other sons. Joseph is highly valued by his father, and his brothers are even more jealous now that all of a sudden Joseph has this vision, has these dreams that they're all going to be bowing down to him one day, and this jealousy begins to ensue in their hearts. Joseph didn't ask for this. He didn't ask to receive these visions from God, but he receives them, and now his brothers are incredibly jealous of him, and they decide to do something about it. They decide to get rid of him. They throw him into a pit, and they sell him to some merchants. And it's throughout this story, Sabbath afternoon's lesson kind of points out a very important point that we learn these two major things. It says this in Sabbath afternoon's lesson: "As we will see too, the life of Joseph highlights two important theological truths. First, God fulfills his promises. Second, God can turn evil into good." This is a great evil that is done. Joseph's brothers take him and throw him into a pit, take him and bind him up and throw him into a pit, sell him off into slavery in Egypt. And Monday's lesson highlights this. Monday's lesson is called Attack on Joseph, and the quote there, it says, "After they cast him into the pit, planning to kill him later, a caravan passes, and Judah, one of his brothers, proposes to his brothers to sell Joseph to them. After Joseph is sold to the Midianites sell him to someone in Egypt, thus anticipating his future glory." It's right here where God's promise is already being fulfilled through the evil that is taking place in Joseph's life. God is using the evilness that his brothers are doing to him to bring about his promise that, Joseph, you will be in a position of higher authority than your brothers. So Joseph is sold into slavery into Egypt for not doing anything wrong, for just living his life and being loved by his father. He's sold into slavery in Egypt, and here, once again, he rises in the ranks in Potiphar's house as a slave and rises to be his second person in command over his entire household. And then all of a sudden, Potiphar's wife comes to him and tries to get him to sleep with her and says, "Come to bed with me." Joseph once again does the right thing and runs away from the situation, but Potiphar's wife accuses him that basically he tried to force her to sleep with him, and all of a sudden Potiphar believes his wife, and all of a sudden Joseph now finds himself in prison for doing the right thing. At this point of the story, I imagine Joseph is confused, heartbroken. "God, where are you? God, what are you doing? I'm doing the right things. I'm honoring you. I honored you in that situation, ran away and decided to not sin against Potiphar and sin against you, and now I'm in jail because of it? Are you serious, God? What is happening?" I imagine that he's struggling with all of these thoughts and all of these ideas. And Wednesday's lesson talks about that. It's titled Joseph, a Slave in Egypt, and this short little quote really jumped out at me. It says, "Joseph experiences here what we all have experienced, the sense of abandonment by God. Though even in this difficult time, the Lord was with Joseph." Genesis chapter 39, verse 21. Even in the jail cell, God is with Joseph. And there's these two people in the jail cell with Joseph, a cupbearer to Pharaoh and a baker. They have these visions, and Joseph interprets the visions for them. One of them is sent to execution. The other, the cupbearer, is restored to his position. And they have these visions that Joseph is able to interpret that showed their future, and they came true. And Joseph tells the cupbearer, hey, when you get to Pharaoh's place, when you're by his side again, tell Pharaoh about me. Tell him that I'm here in this situation. Tell him about this unjust situation. Tell him about me. Cupbearer gets reinstalled just as Joseph has predicted, and cupbearer forgets about him. I forget the exact amount of years, but it's a few years that go by, and Joseph is still in prison for something he did not do. But then Pharaoh receives a vision, a dream that troubles him deeply. He begins to tell the people about this, and the cupbearer is present, and the cupbearer finally remembers, there was that one guy in jail, Joseph. Yeah, he can interpret dreams. So Pharaoh calls Joseph up, finally exiting the jail cell into Pharaoh's presence, and Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream, and all of a sudden, Joseph now finds himself in a position of second in command in all of Egypt. Boom! God's promise fulfilled. Bringing about good, even in the midst of evil. This is what Thursday's lesson said. It's titled The Dreams of Pharaoh. It says this: how fascinating. Thanks to God, Joseph goes from ruler over Potiphar's house to ruler over the prison to ruler over all of Egypt. What a powerful story about how even amid what look like terrible circumstances, God providences are revealed. And this is the beautiful truth that you and I can hold on to, that we see all through Joseph's story, because the famine strikes in the land. Pharaoh receives this vision about a famine that's coming, and Joseph warns him, and so they prepare and they gather all the food, and they put 10%, they put a portion of it away so that they can last through all of the famine that happens. And the famine strikes the land, and all of a sudden Joseph's brothers come into his presence to buy food, and they bow in his presence. Boom. Promise fulfilled. The vision that God gave Joseph fulfilled. That all his brothers would one day bow down to him. And this is the beautiful thing about Joseph's story, that he is a man of God through it all. And he may have been in some horrible circumstances because he did the right thing, but he never lost faith and he never lost hope. And I want to encourage you today with that message, that no matter how terrible your circumstance may be, no matter how awful things may be happening in your life, and perhaps you are doing all the right things, you're making the best decisions, you're praying to God about decisions that you make, you're moving forward with what you think God is best, and you're living by what the Bible teaches, and you're doing all of these things, right? And you believe that you're doing the right thing, and yet you still find yourself in a horrible situation. Remember the truth that Joseph had to cling to, that God is still present, and he's still working to bring about all things for good. So I want to invite you this next week to trust him, no matter what it may look like. No matter what your life may look like, trust him and believe that even though things may look grim right now, that God can work all things out for the good.